there is a heater.
Yeah.
Because by law, they were required to have a defroster.
Yeah.
And their solution to that is they took a Gillette hairdryer. This is not a joke. I'll have to show you.
Yeah.
There's literally a Gillette hairdryer under the dash that you could turn on, and it's set to max heat.
That's what you do when you're a small car company.
Yep. They literally just shoved a hairdryer under the dash.
Hello everyone, welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. I'm Max. You join me in Monument, Colorado with a very, very special retro electric vehicle. This is the Unique Mobility Electrek. And to tell you all about it and what he's done to it, we have Declan here, Declan Kavanagh, who has very kindly invited us to his garage. And Declan, just can you introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, I'm Declan. I'm a 19-year-old electrical engineering student here in Monument. I go to ASU. And I have a very strange collection of electric cars, my favorite of which is my Electreks.
So you have two of these cars.
I do. That's okay, kind of not true. I actually have four of these cars.
Okay.
I have an addiction. I'm one of the only people left who knows how to work on these cars, so I kind of see it as my responsibility.
And the biggest question just off the bat that I think people are going to have is, what is this?
So this is a 1982 Unique Mobility Electrek. They made 75 of these from 1979 to 1982, so this was one of the last ones they made. This one's actually VIN number 11. The VINs are probably out of order. But it's a built from the ground up electric car that they built in Denver. They built the bodies, they built the frame, and then the rest is off the shelf.
Nice. So Colorado company, and they sort of exist today in some capacity, right?
They do. So 2 years ago, they were bought out by a mega conglomerate called Danfoss. But up to that point, UQM, Unique Mobility, was one of the industry's best electric motor sellers.
Wow. I mean, it's fascinating. And I think their research sort of went on to inform some of BMW's very early EV efforts with what they did with the Mini program and all that. But this here, was kind of born out of the oil crisis, as I understand it?
Yeah, so 1970s, you had the Iran-Iraq War and the Iranian Revolution, which led to the oil crisis, and people couldn't afford to fill up their big Mustangs and Corvettes and stuff like that. And so what's more efficient than an electric car? So you saw all these kinds of pop-up companies, what a lot of people refer to as the crap era of EVs, just trying anything, throwing everything against the wall. And UQM was one of these companies alongside Vanguard Sebring and Zap and all these other companies that were trying to make electric cars at the time. What a lot of people don't realize is electric cars actually predate gas cars by 5 years. Not a big margin, but electric cars came first. And even in the early 20s on American roads, electric cars outnumbered gas cars. But before climate change was an issue, or was known to be an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, people didn't really care. And then once it started coming more into the public eye in the 70s, 80s, that's when we started seeing the first electric revolution. And obviously it wasn't as big as the early 2000s, but cars like this is really what inspired GM and Nissan to start developing their electric vehicle programs.
Right. I think the top early EV in everyone's mind is the GM EV1, right, where they all crushed and compacted those. Those were obviously much more recent than this. But in terms of technology, specs, nerdery, what are we kind of looking at here?
So obviously the battery technology of the time was lead acid. You didn't get any better than lead acid. There was no lithium ion. Maybe there's a little bit of experimenting with aluminum saltwater batteries, but really the mainstream was lead acid. So this thing uses 16 6-volt lead acid batteries.
From a golf cart, basically.
They're golf cart batteries, but a lot of them, and they're very heavy. In terms of motors, this just uses a DC. I mean, they could have used an AC, but the technology wasn't really refined to manufacturing at that point.
Brushed DC motor, right?
The brushed DC shunt wound.
And that's under the hood here.
Yes.
And so just packaging-wise, we'll look at that in a second with the motor, but I think people can see really clearly just through the middle of the car that the batteries were packaged kind of innovatively in this cylinder running down the whole middle of the car.
Yeah. There's no mistaking where the batteries are in this thing because of the absolutely massive center console. And it's actually interesting. They were planning on doing a hot swappable system, so the batteries actually slide in and out pretty easily. I'll have to show you the battery tray that was included with the cars.
With the idea being that people could do that to really quickly get a new battery pack in range?
Yeah. So the idea was that you'd have 2 or 3 battery packs, and if you parked at night, you would change battery packs and charge the one that you had used the day before.
That's amazing, because right now, there are some bleeding edge Chinese EVs that use a battery swapping system. Much obviously that's automated. It's totally different, but it's so cool to think that they were thinking about this. And the other thing people will ask is nowadays we have J1772, we have NEMA standards. Not much of that in the way of electric vehicle appliances, I imagine, existed back then. So how did you charge this?
No, there was no standard back then. I mean, in the 90s you had the Magna charge as standard, and then now as of 2010 you had the J7072 and CCS. This thing just plugged into a normal wall outlet. You flip down the front license plate, and you'd have a little socket there, and you plugged in an extension cord into a 20 amp circuit, and it'd take 10, 12 hours to charge to a full battery.
Yep, to charge all of those 16 6-volt batteries, which are parallel in this?
Series,
because they add up to 96 volt of system output. So that is kind of wild. I mean, everyone nowadays is talking about the 800 volt DC fast charging EVs. This is what you had back then.
That would blow this up. It would explode.
Yes, and we'll get into this a little bit, but the biggest issue with this seems to be in terms of keeping these guys running, that the motor controller, because they didn't really have also like the digital technology, MOSFETs, all the stuff we have today with modern motor inverters. So what has it been like keeping this guy running?
It's rough. It is incredibly unreliable, if you would believe it. The motor controller is one of the parts that's not off the shelf. They built it in-house with a company called Solec in Chicago, and it is a completely analog system. And it's really cool to see, and I'm sure you'll get some footage of it. I have it sitting on my bench in there.
Yeah.
But it's just so unreliable because, like you said, there was no MOSFETs, or there were there's no computers in the car.
Yeah.
It's all analog to drive this smooth acceleration, and also has regen control. And
regen in the first production car, as I understand it, that had regenerative braking.
Yep, first car ever produced that was commercially available with regen braking. The first car ever was the AMC Amtron, I believe is what it was called.
But those never really shipped to people.
There was only ever one, and you couldn't buy it.
Yeah. And so these, they made, 75 of them?
75 to be exact. They made 75 of these things.
Yep, all basically in Colorado, or what was the other state?
They were all made in Colorado, but a lot of them were shipped to Wisconsin and Arizona.
Okay. And then Arizona, as you said, they were testing some of the saltwater, different battery chemistries, basically.
A lot of these cars ended up in colleges and universities, used for testing modern battery technology to see if a modern electric car would be ready. So there were some of these retrofitted with some aluminum saltwater batteries, and some of them with early lead acid, or not lead acid. Some of them were fitted with early lithium-ion technology.
Oh, wow.
This one was used as a test bed, but not for batteries. This was just used on the lead acid by a company called Amfab in Arizona.
If we can take a quick tour of the body, this is constructed from fiberglass, right?
Yeah, full fiberglass. Unique Mobility was known for their high-quality fiberglass work. This is actually a special car because a lot of them didn't actually have paint. They just relied on the gel coat from the fiberglass molds. So this car does actually have paint on it. Believe it or not, this is the best condition Electrek known to still exist. It might not look like it. There's some damage to the paint, and it's not perfect, but nobody takes care of these cars. Until really I came along. They were sitting in fields and stuff like that.
And there wasn't much documentation on them either.
There was no documentation when I first found these cars 3 years ago. There was one article online that I was able to find, and it was very factually wrong, as I've come to find.
So you got in touch with basically the former engineers at this company?
Yeah, I've made a ton of connections. Jim McCullough is the biggest. I got to give him a shout out, even though he won't watch this video. He doesn't know how to use YouTube. But he's an ex-employee of Unique Mobility, and without him I would not have been able to fix these cars, because when I first got into these cars I was a film student. I knew nothing about electric cars, and obviously now I'm an electrical engineering student, but really without Jim these cars would not be running. And then John Gould, who was the founder of Unique Mobility back in 1969. I got in touch with him and got a really good, accurate history of the company. Very nice people. All these people are incredibly nice, and just some really cool people that I've got to meet from the company.
Yeah, it's just a fascinating story, fascinating people, and it's good to see that their work didn't go to waste. Obviously, I think part of the modern EV technology we're grateful to have today did result from big experiments like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is one of those EVs that actually does have a transmission.
Yes, a 4-speed Volkswagen manual transmission. it's mainly because the motor can't get high enough revs to go highway speeds, and they wanted a highway capable vehicle. So they put a transmission in there, and hey, it works.
Yeah. What is the max range of the motor, you think?
32, I believe, is the max.
So 4-speed, I imagine, would help with that. What's the top speed this car could get to?
They advertise 75. I will not go faster than 60. It gets scary.
Maybe a downhill with a good tailwind.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to open the door just so we can take a quick peek at the dash?
Let me move this beautiful key.
I mean, you've done not only, I'm sure, have you done a lot on the actual mechanical aspect of this car, but the upholstery and everything is really, honestly, in quite good condition for any car of this age.
So I got to give my brother credit for the carpets. The carpets used to be completely rotted out, and he redid all the carpets, and it looks absolutely incredible. But yeah, a lot of cleaning. And again, my brother did most of that. He was the one who picked up this car. I was in college at the time. And when he bought it, he went through with a wet vac and a steamer and really cleaned everything up, which is part of the reason why this is the best condition Electrek that still exists today.
That's amazing. And I guess that's where your flux capacitor would go, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But in all seriousness, this is so cool. Is this JVC? Did they just put this radio unit in out of the factory?
That's not the stock one, but yes, they would ship with a JVC or an Alpine.
Miss the days when cars just had those standard, slots you could just put in and out. Have you ever thought about like doing a CarPlay console or some more dash work on this?
When one of my other Electreks, one of the ones that aren't here, because I have 4. The next one that I'm working on is going to be retro modded and have a more modern interior and possibly a different drivetrain as well.
Oh, that's awesome. So in a bit, we'll drive this in a new clip. You actually, I think you have to drive your brother somewhere, but if we have some time, could we take a peek at your garage, look at what you've been working on?
Absolutely.
The stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I have quite the collection. I'm kind of proud of it, I never thought that I'd have a collection like this, especially at...
Also, we're going to just casually pass a city car.
Yeah. Here, I can actually make this look a little better for you. So you'll have to forgive it. It's kind of torn apart at the moment. I'm using it as a mold for another project that you'll see in a moment.
So for those who aren't in the know, this is an even more primitive early EV, basically designed to be, what was it, like a Volkswagen Beetle price point?
Yep. So this was the car that was competing with the Electrek at the time. And they sold 4,000 of these, and they only made 75 of these, and this thing's terrible. But it's because that was $80,000 in today's money, and this was $20,000 in today's money.
Yeah.
So you get what you pay for, I guess.
I mean, it looks like something. I guess the Electrek is a funky looking vehicle too, but you can much more see that looks like a sedan, right?
And it drives like a car too. This does not drive like a car. This thing sucks. And you'll have to forgive it for, I'm doing a lot of projects. It's winter here in Colorado, so the cars don't get driven, they get worked on.
Yeah.
I promise I take good care of
Like any true car enthusiast, everything's a work in progress.
I do own a Coda. That's not mine. I'm storing it for a friend. Mine's white and also an engineering
For
prototype.
those who don't know, Coda, what was, I guess 2010s technically is
2010
when they released this.
to 2012.
Electric sedan, lithium ion, much more modern technology. Super cool. I mean, unfortunately, this company launched not long before the Tesla Model S EV, you may have heard of, so face some stiff competition, but super interesting. This video isn't about it, but we just have to kind of take a gander and appreciate the Coda.
So this is a CT&T E-Zone City 2 from 2010. They only made 10 of these. It's a Korean-made electric car, and it's not much more than a glorified golf cart. And I just put new batteries in it, so I'm top balancing all the cells right now. Top speed 40 miles an hour. I mean, it's a pretty fun little car to drive. It's very dramatic. It's very loud. Like when you're even going 20, it's screaming at you. It's hilarious. This is the rarest car I own, and also probably the one that causes me the most pain.
But joy when it works.
Joy when it works, and it doesn't usually do that.
My boss, Kyle, he owns the Smart EQ for 2, which it's kind of like the more mature, kind of sophisticated version of this. Yeah. But same kind of, size of car, such a fun, just throw it around city machine.
Exactly, yeah. And it's a great for getting groceries and not much else.
Yeah, that range will keep you on a tight tether.
Yeah.
Then you also have the subframe here for another city car.
Yeah, so this is the reason that red car out there was so torn apart. This is actually a 1975 city car that I'm doing a body off restoration. It was in real bad shape when I got it. I actually got both of these cars for free, so they were not in great shape. That one out there is staying stock, but this one I'm actually retro modding with some of the stuff that I have over on my workbench, including Tesla modules and a modern controller. And I'm remaking the entire body out of fiberglass. You can see a piece of it here.
Yeah.
To replace the ABS body that was originally in it.
That's amazing. And let's take a look at your workbench in a second. But first, you have another Electrek here. By the way, it is funny. Your brother Quinn was mentioning this, but when you just read it on the car, people who don't know what this is, it just looks like
Electrek. Yeah, that's what we first thought when we first.
Do you get a lot of comments if you? I mean, this one isn't driving right now, but when you drive the other one around, like, do you get a lot of attention from that?
Oh my God, so much attention! I constantly. You get people waving at you, you get people honking at you. You stop at a stoplight, and the person next to you rolls down their window and starts yelling at you.
Like, and I'm guessing most people don't have any idea what it is.
Nobody knows what these are,
Yeah.
Which is a shame because they're so cool, and that's why I appreciate attention.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is like, you're right here in Colorado. This is like the dream EV nerd's garage, especially in obscure EVs, which is where you seem to be very comfortable.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is a problem. All my cars that I own are rare EVs. I don't own any cars that are not rare EVs.
Yeah.
No, but this one's very special. This is VIN number 1.
So very first production one rolled off.
Yep, they used this as a parts getter to get parts for their other cars. So
Yeah.
if they're like, hey, we need a bolt from Home Depot, you hopped in this one and you ran down.
And supposedly Carroll Shelby was used this one.
That's the rumor. There will never be a way for me to say for certain if that's true. But the rumors in the company are, because Carroll Shelby was involved in this company. He was an investor and he was on the board of directors for a while. Because people don't realize Carroll Shelby liked electric cars.
Because he saw he was a smart guy. He saw that performance potential.
Yeah, he did. And so with Unique Mobility, he wanted to make a electric sports car that would go 0 to 100 to 0 in 10 seconds. And they did not do that ever. But the rumor is that this was the car that Carroll Shelby would take around the UQM test track. They actually own their own test track in Castle Rock.
Wow.
And it has the blue racing stripes.
Makes it go faster.
Yeah, you'll have to forgive the condition of this car right now. It recently broke down again, and I'm doing some modernization on the drivetrain with some Tesla batteries. It's getting 14 Tesla modules, so hopefully.
Oh my
increase
gosh.
it. My end goal with this car is have it as my daily driver.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's getting repainted and restickered at some point. I know people like patina. I don't. I don't like patina.
Yeah.
So.
Modernize everything. And I have to say, as you admit, it's kind of rough, but I do imagine that of all the Electreks out there in the world, this is still probably one of the better conditioned bodies.
Yes, it really is. And most Electreks that you find have been sitting in fields for 50 years or something. It's hard to find Electreks in good condition.
Yeah.
And it's actually impossible to. So that's why I buy them, and I'm, like I said, one of the last people.
Keeping the dream alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can we take a look at your workbench?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit of a mess. I'm not the most organized guy, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
This section here is all parts that are going to be going into the 1975 city car. So you got your 2 Tesla modules, an all-tracks controller, some relays for Ford neutral reverse, and even an Apple CarPlay head unit that's going to be going in my 1975 car.
Nice.
Some chargers, some speakers, and stuff like that. Part of my 3D printer that I haven't gotten fully set up yet.
So is that the idea that you could maybe fabricate some smaller parts for that?
Yeah, and I've had it for a couple of years. I love it, and it's a CR10. I just haven't.
Yeah.
I just moved here, so.
Right.
Moving on to this. This is the controller out of a Unique Mobility Electrek, and you'll probably get more B-roll, but you can see there's like a nice plaque up here from Solek. But this is where you can really see the analog system of this. This is just a 50-pound metal brick of transistors and transformers and relays.
And I love how they label it, I guess maybe it's somewhat ambitiously, highway electric vehicle motor controller.
Oh yeah,
specifying that this is no average, just baby controller. This is for a highway vehicle.
This is a highway cable. And it does do highway. I won't question that. It's a little scary, but it does do that. This one's currently broken. The field driving circuit fried itself on a hot day in LA. So I'm replacing this board, and while I'm in here, I'm replacing the transistors with MOSFETs, since these are the old, blanking on what they're called. I promise I'm an engineering student.
I'm not an electrical engineer, so I'm just going to defer to your judgment. But basically, right,
these are old.
Yeah, if you know anything about the history of silicon and computers, in the late 70s, early 80s, this is state of the art. This is what they could do for cars.
Very, very state of the art. No other electric car in the 80s had a controller quite like this. All of them used contact systems like the city cars, this was incredibly modern and actually influenced modern electric car motor controllers. This was incredibly ahead of its time.
Yeah, I mean, we take for granted now the crazy inverters you have. They're powering way more high voltage batteries than what your Teslas, Rivians, your Kia EV6, whatever electric car you want to name. This stuff is commoditized now. Other companies are doing it off the shelf, but Unique Mobility had to do this themselves.
Yeah, and they did. Even though it's super unreliable and breaks constantly. Case in point, that's why that car doesn't drive right now.
And that's kind of your most vulnerable point, right? Because parts of these cars, I mean, the fiberglass body is unique, but the suspension, the chassis and transmission are shared with Volkswagen cars. Some of the trim elements are from, I think, Toyotas and Chevy Monza. Yep. So you can get replacements for those, but stuff goes wrong with this, you really got to fix it yourself.
You're screwed. There's a light that comes on the dash. It's called logic off, which means that your controller's broken. And whenever you see that logic off light, you cry.
That's
you know the car's out for a couple months.
Yeah.
And you know you're in for some pain. You go through with a multimeter and an oscilloscope and you try to figure out what went wrong.
And that's where your electrical engineering degree is going to work.
Exactly.
Well, that is so cool. And I can't wait in a little bit to actually drive that Electrek and show people what that's like.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much for showing us your setup.
Absolutely. I'm happy to.
So Declan, we're under the hood here. Many EV owners will be wondering, is there a frunk? Well, of course, not the way this is packaged. We've got a motor here and a bunch of other stuff. So can you walk us through it? Yeah,
a little too big of a motor for a frunk. But to start off with, you can see these are where the batteries come out through the battery tray. There's a nice big Anderson connector down in there that connects the batteries to the rest of the car. Up on this shelf here, you just got fuses, ignition relays, 12-volt relays, and then a shunt for the high voltage system.
High voltage being 96.
90s, yeah. I can remember modern EVs are much higher voltage. High voltage on this thing is 96 volts. This all runs into the controller, which you could see on my workbench in there. That's all stored under here. You can't actually see it with the car properly assembled, but you can see all the wires coming out of it from here. Mm-hmm. Then you have a DC-DC converter, which steps down the 96 volts from the batteries to the 12 volts to charge the battery. It actually looks like it's not hooked up.
So there is a 7th lead acid battery in there just for running the 12 volts?
Yeah, 17th.
Oh, sorry. 17, 16 6 volts for the drivetrain. And that auxiliary extra one.
Yep. And then so you have the DC-DC that drives that. And then over here you have the nice big charger, which was both the DC-DC and the charger custom made by Solek for this car. Mm-hmm. On the front of the charger too, you can see you have an amp and a voltmeter, just so you can monitor while charging. And again, that just runs off of a household 120 volts. Then you have your nice big red GM. That's not the right word. Nice big red General Electric's motor down here. 32 volts shunt wound with the separately excited field. Pretty simple how it works. You got your field here and your armature in the back, and then some diagnostic cables coming off of that. And obviously that is then attached to the Volkswagen 4-speed gearbox. Pretty straightforward system. Not much fancy to it.
And this GE power unit, I mean, they were, I guess, kind of were the Tesla of the day when it came to components like this.
Yeah. City cars ran off GE. The Electreks ran off GE.
So it might not be an AC induction motor, but this is kind of the best performance they could get for a car application.
This is the best of the best in the 80s, unless you were willing to custom make an AC motor, which they were not.
And you'd probably need a huge budget, resources, a much bigger car manufacturer, because this isn't just a story of an early EV, it's basically the story of a startup.
Yeah, exactly. They worked with the budget they had. They had a pre-existing deal with Volkswagen. Before they made the Electrek, they made dune buggies. And so they had a pre-existing deal with Volkswagen. They're like, hey, we might as well take the transmissions from the dune buggies and chuck them in an Electrek.
Yeah, and as I understand it, this was sort of trying to market itself as a sports car too.
They surprisingly, you wouldn't believe it, they were. I mean, at the time, this was the fastest electric car that you could buy at 75 miles per hour. Longest range at 100 if you were lucky. I mean, yeah, they were bragging about all the aerodynamics of the car.
Yeah, so back in the day, this was theoretically an aerodynamic design.
This was incredibly aerodynamic.
Did they run it through a computer model or wind tunnel? I don't know.
They didn't do wind tunnel, but they did the old Ford method where they put yarn on it.
Oh, the old yeah, I
They
see where it
taped
blows.
yarn all over it. I have pictures of that I can show you
Uh-huh.
of them doing the aerodynamic testing.
And was there any advantage, was part of them using fiberglass that they could theoretically fabricate it into more aerodynamic shape, or?
I'm sure that was an unintended side effect.
But
Really,
their expertise with it being the bigger thing.
the biggest reason they used fiberglass is because they knew how to work with fiberglass. They
Yeah.
had a team dedicated to fiberglass in-house, and so when it came time to building the bodies. And the I'm sure unintended side effect is fiberglass doesn't corrode with battery acid, so when you're using 16 6-volts, I mean, it's nice that your car won't corrode itself and no rust. So that's part of the reason why these things hold up so well is because they don't rust.
Yeah.
There's not really much that can go wrong with fiberglass. I will say though, interestingly enough, because this has a manual gearbox, this is one of the only electric cars that you can free rev. So I don't even have to drive it around if you want to hear it. I can free rev it while it's parked.
Sure, yeah.
No other electric car will do that.
Oh man, and we can hear it under the hood. That's wild. So you might be hearing a little bit of whine from the electrical system.
That's the transformer, the
Stepping down the DC.
Yep. And right here is the accelerator. It's just 2 potentiometers in a little box that's connected to the pedal. So if I go,
How refreshingly direct.
oh yeah,
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's still technically throttle by wire, but so much more, I don't know, simple and direct than, today's motor controllers.
yeah. And it's such a beautiful noise too. I love the sound that this car makes.
That's awesome.
They don't sugarcoat anything. It's just the nice sound of brushes and commutators.
Oh, yes. Good old school days of motors. Well, can't wait. Let's get in this and drive it around town.
Cool. So to start it, I have to use a screwdriver because I don't have the key slot in yet. By the time I'm selling this, everything in here will be perfect. Still a little bit of a work in progress. But you stick it in here and you twist it and you hear the click of some relays. I'm going to lock it in just so my steering wheel doesn't lock. And shove that back here. You do got really comfortable
Yeah, really
back
comfortable
seats.
for the rear passengers. I guess you can slide these front seats a little forward, but we're both tall and we're the only people in the car, so we'll just leave it like this.
Yeah.
And I honestly, as disconcerting as it is to know that there's 16 lead acid batteries
deadly
under
amount
here,
of
a deadly
batteries.
amount of acid that just leak out should something go wrong. It's kind of nice having this
It is big, and it does feel roomy in here too because of how
Yeah.
far apart we are.
Yeah.
It's a small car, but because we're so pushed against the side of the car, it feels roomy.
Yeah, if I can show that on camera, because of you can tell really that the bodywork is so angled, right? Or it's cambered basically towards the top. So, and these windows I have to show too, so I loosen this, right?
Yep.
And then this is this blew my mind. Because if you look at the window design, it's not like a traditional roller. It actually pivots. So is that loose enough?
Yeah, it should be loose.
Yeah. And so now I can just pivot the window to have that fresh air experience.
The sunroof also opens.
Yes, and there's a sunroof in this.
All electrics had a sunroof.
All electrics came, standard.
Yep.
Pretty good equipment. And these were, I don't think we mentioned real world price. It was in the day $25,000.
$25,000, which adjusted for inflation is $82,000.
So this was Model S money, basically.
Yeah, for something that is not a Model S.
But of its day, like you said, this was the highest performance EV you could get.
Yeah. Gauge cluster is pretty simple. You got a speedometer, a non-working amp meter, a non-working voltmeter, and a non-working capacity meter.
So when you are working on the electrical system, do you look at how do you know what to do?
Diagnostic lights.
Okay, just seeing what's on there.
Yeah, so power on means the car's on. It's not going to tell me that it's on right now because this isn't hooked up because I was doing some testing earlier. Battery reverse basically means you have positive and negative switched up. Low voltage means that the battery voltage is too low to drive. High voltage is it's too high and the car's going to explode. Arm chopper is my favorite because it's just so concerning. What is arm chopper?
It's a scary name.
It's not very interesting. It's just that the armature's chopping, the current is chopping at lower speeds. I assume they did that because it's hilarious. Logic off it means you're going to have a really, really bad couple months and you're probably going to end up crying a lot. That means the controller is broken.
Right, and that's where your bench comes in.
That's where my bench comes in. I hate that light. Whenever you see that light, you know you're in for a bad time. And then overheat just means that the motor is overheating. Never seen that. It's pretty efficient with not overheating. Obviously, then you have your gated shifter here, your 4-speed, and your JVC off-the-shelf radio, which does not work. I don't know if you'll agree with me, but I always think this car is weirdly comfortable. The seats being so plush and stuff like that.
It's a very reclined position we're in.
It's almost sporty. You know?
Almost sporty, yeah. Not exactly Porsche bolsters, but you know, it's, yeah. And then, okay, now inside I'm hearing, I don't know, what is that what am I hearing? Fan belt or something, or?
What, the whining sound?
Yeah.
Pure motor.
Pure motor noise, okay, just the revs from that.
Yep.
And is there any kind of like active cooling that we might be hearing as well?
You won't hear it now because it's not hooked up, but when it gets warmer out, I can turn on a AC fan that'll cool the motor with air.
Okay, and how efficient generally is climate? Is there any sort of resistive heat or anything in this?
Well, there is a heater because by law they were required to have a defroster.
Yeah.
And their solution to that is they took a Gillette hairdryer. This is not a joke, I'll have to show you.
Yeah.
There's literally a Gillette hairdryer under the dash that you could turn on, and it's set to max heat.
That's what you do when you're a small car company.
Yep, they literally just shoved a hairdryer under the dash.
That's amazing. And so, very easy part to replace if you just source another Gillette
I have to replace it anyway because there's asbestos in it. As you can tell, it's not the fastest around, and I don't make it go very fast.
But it's not slow. I mean, like, you know, feels notably faster than, you know, let's just say a standard golf cart.
Yeah.
It is a car.
It is a car. And this thing will do highway speeds if you wanted to. You can do a shift if you want. Fancy.
What would happen theoretically if you money shifted this?
Define money shift.
Like you went from fourth to first.
You would probably damage the transmission before you damage the motor.
It is just so cool to be able to rest your arms and know, like, under you is basically the powertrain, which is wild. And then I guess the motor is right in front of where my feet are, under the hood there,
Just don't think about it too much.
There's
no firewall.
No firewall at all. Apparently, this is not, this wasn't an amazing crash safety car.
Well, actually for the time it got 5 stars.
Okay, so 5 stars, and it's in 1981 or 1982.
I think the crash testing was done in 81.
Okay.
You could tell it doesn't like hills.
Yeah, so, I mean, to be fair, we are going up a bit of a grade now. But yeah, we're working. So you said the potentiometer and that stuff, this isn't accurate.
That's not at all accurate.
Okay.
I could probably tell you an estimate that we're probably pulling about 300 amps right now.
And there's regen in this too. So
there is. So if I take my foot off the clutch, and it is strong.
Well, there goes the GoPro. Oh my God.
I probably shouldn't have dumped the clutch like that.
You're
I apologize.
Good. You're all good. So it is a strong regen effect.
Yes. Usually I don't use regen. Just because it can damage the car if you do it too much. That is one of the conditions in which the car can explode.
Which we're looking at the owner's manual, but there's many conditions that can happen.
In which the car can explode. It won't, I promise.
Yeah, well, you know what you're doing, taking care of it, but
we'll just say that I do.
Yeah, but I imagine, I mean, I don't know, it'd be fascinating to talk. Have you talked to people who owned this and dailied it back in the day?
Yeah, a lot of the engineers at the factory did daily their Electreks. This car was a daily driver before I bought it. Well, not technically. Before the batteries died, and then they parked it for 20 years, and then I bought it.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people did daily these cars in Denver.
Yeah, and it is nice that, you know, obviously you put love and care into it. You have to take care of the motor controller and stuff. But when it comes to those batteries, it's not like you have to source 4680 or 2170 cells or anything exotic. You just go to Batteries Plus or an auto parts store.
They know me by name there. I buy so many batteries.
Yeah, you're like, I'd like 16 of your 6 volts.
I give them a call and I'm like, hey, I need 16 6 volts. They're like, Declan? I'm like, yep.
It's me.
It's me. Got another one.
I love it. And yeah, so generally, I mean, neighborhood driving, it's perfect, but you said basically this can get up to 60 miles an hour realistically.
It can, yes.
Yeah.
It gets scary.
Yeah.
Past 50, it gets...
The chassis made...
You start shaking a little bit.
Uh-huh.
You start white knuckling it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can do highway speeds.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who dailied it back in the 80s would daily on the highway. I know John Gould and Jim McCullough would both daily their Electreks on the highway.
To commute, that's awesome.
Yeah. Drive a little bit more efficiently here.
Yeah.
That's the other joy of having a manual is you get a little bit more efficiency out of it. The steering's a little heavy. There's no power steering. It's all rack and pinion.
Yeah.
So it's a little heavy because
no
it's
hydraulics of any kind.
No power brakes, but It doesn't feel bad. I mean, it's kind of a comfortable car to drive. Like, it's not a car that you'd be taking to the track.
Yeah.
But, like, if you want to go to Walmart or go to a friend's house on the weekend, this is a perfect car for it.
Yeah. And obviously the brakes, they don't blend. There's no
brake blending at all.
There's no software controller for that at this time.
Because there's no software at all. For the most part, like I said, I don't use regen. Like, right now, I could be regenning right now, but I'm not going to.
Because you want to just be nice on the cars.
You want because it's a brushed DC.
Yeah.
It's really not meant to have regen.
That's a lot of friction, a lot of heat that's going to build up in that motor.
So I choose to just use the clutch when cruising down hills, which I mean doesn't help the range, but it'll keep the car running for longer.
Yep, kind of amazing. That I don't think that your average layperson would think that there'd be a drivable EV like this from the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, people are surprised when I pull up in my 2012 Coda and they're like, they had electric cars in 2012? People are so shocked when they find out that there were electric cars in the 80s, and then you drop the bomb that electric cars predate gas cars, and they don't know what to think.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't even have to get conspiratorial. The history of electric cars is just insane. It's kind of a wacky story to follow.
It really is, and it's really cool.
I mean, it's cool. It's also sad in some ways, because you can see at like times like this that we weren't far off from what we have today. We were just limited by battery technology. Might
have had something to do with the look as well.
Yeah, maybe people weren't super into the aircraft cross, unique sedan style. Yeah. Let's just put it that way.
The other great thing in an electric manual, you can't stall it. So I could literally start in fourth. No problem.
Yeah.
It's going to be really slow.
But the motor will do it.
It'll do it. It's not going to. It's not.
It doesn't have a minimum like rev. It's awesome.
We'll have a little bit of armature chopper, and you're good to go. A lot of people, they just don't know what it is, and they don't know what to think about it because it's such a strange car to see driving around.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see this thing driving from the outside, it just looks hilarious. It looks like it should not be allowed.
I'm gonna put in some B-roll of that. Oh, there's a futuristic brethren, Chevy Bolt,
He thinks he's so cool in his Chevy Bolt. I got my Electrek.
His liquid-cooled lithium-ion battery pack.
Yeah, his is reliable, but does his look like this?
Yeah, and
I love that car.
We were talking earlier about how you getting into cars and project cars and stuff. Is it now at the point where you're just interested in collecting the electric stuff? Or?
Oh yeah, I have a rule when I'm going to buy a new car, which I do way more than anyone should. It has to either be electric or I have to have plans to convert it to electric.
That's what you're interested in engineering and working on?
Yeah. I think electric's the future, and I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, at this point in time, no. But it is crazy again. Now, just going back to 1981, this moment, this could have been the future.
Could have been.
Right then and there.
Could have been.
Yeah.
But I'm also an environmentalist, so I enjoy the environmental benefits. It's always better to buy a used car than a new car.
And give it new life like you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So rather than buying a brand new Tesla.
Right. With a big 100 kilowatt hour pack that's going to be made from resources somewhere. That's such a big thing people are talking about.
Even my Coda, I bought that used and I got it back on the road. Yeah. Not to toot my own horn or sound like a snobby environmentalist.
No, but I think it's good to have people like you to show that also there's I think people have this instinctual fear of EVs that, because it's electric, that must mean it's digital and that it's obsolete, and once it breaks, it breaks. And that's not true. I mean, they're appliances, they're components just like anything else, and especially when something is as analog and as primitive as this, you actually can get in there and fix stuff yourself.
Yeah, and that's what I think a lot of people, there's this huge stigma in the car world. I get accused all the time of not being a car guy because I don't own any gas cars. I own all electric. People are like, how do you work on those? Those aren't project cars. And then I show them a picture. Electric cars are not new.
Yeah.
And just because this is rare, there are hundreds of thousands of old electric cars that you can buy and work on. I started working on this when I was a film student. You don't need an electrical engineering degree to work on an electric car.
Yeah. And maybe that makes it more accessible, not to trivialize what you've done, but obviously it's probably easier to work with this than, again, old carbureted engines, which have many of their own issues.
Yeah, and the thing about electric cars is that electric motors are never going to die.
Yeah.
I have, the oldest electric car I own is 40 years old, 52 years old now. And when I bought that, it hadn't run in 30 years. Put batteries in it, motor started right up. Yeah. The motors in these things never die because electric motors don't die. Maybe you'll need some new brushes at some point or stuff like that, but...
Yeah, but nowadays with the DC brushless motors and AC induction, we're just seeing that I mean, those are dead reliable power units,
Yeah.
really are, especially compared to the very complicated modern engines and hybrid systems we have. So I'm with you. I think the sooner we can all be on those, the better off we will all be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a sign. Get yourself an electric project car.
Yeah.
Because you know what, they exist. Go on Facebook. You find
Yeah.
there's plenty of electric cars from the
Yeah.
70s, 80s, 90s. They're easy. They're a good gateway into modern electric cars as well.
Yeah.
I mean, understanding the system that goes on under this hood has helped me work on my modern AC motors in my Coda and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the CT&T as well.
But this is so fun. This is just such a cool and, pardon the pun, unique experience.
Yeah. It's in the name.
Yes, I'm sure that's been made. The joke has been made thousands of times.
Oh, plenty.
But it's true. I mean, this is a super unique car.
Yeah. 75.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I always got to understand that people don't always have the same affinity for electric vehicles that I do when I talk about them. But they're just so cool. I love everything about electric cars.
Well, you're preaching to the choir, because people watching our channel, hopefully, I think they're all into electric cars. And again, like, not to make this ideological or anything, but electric cars are exciting, whether or not you also like gas cars. I mean, and it's so cool to see such an early example of one running, thanks to you, beautifully. And it's also just cool to see that you've gotten in touch with some of the people that made this happen back in the day, and that, they're still with it. Have you gotten any of their thoughts on, like, the modern EV? Obviously, it's obvious that EVs are a big deal now, but do you think they're proud of their work? I mean, what's their
absolutely.
impression?
You could tell that they love the work that they did. John Gould especially, he said to me on multiple occasions that if he were younger and in this day and age, he would try again. He would do another electric car company because he just loves them so much. And obviously, a guy like John Gould, who dared to create an electric car company back in 1970s.
Before Kickstarter, before a bunch of venture capital tech funding, before you could throw up a website and a 3D render and say you have an electric car company.
Exactly.
They actually did it,
Cool. So very much an early adapter. They're obviously very proud of their work. You can see, I mean, Jim McCullough, the guy who helped me kind of introduce me into how to work on these cars, he would literally sit with me for hours and hours on end. We would go up to Denver and we would literally be there till 2 or 3 a.m. and he would just talk through every system. He had thousands and thousands of papers of wire diagrams and all this fun stuff. Like, you could tell that they were passionate about what they did.
Even the deer are confused. They're like, they just watching this thing driving by. What must they be thinking?
Never seen that car before.
All right, Declan, what do we have here? So
here we have some of the documentation for the Electreks. This first is the original owner's manual that would come with the car. It's quite thick, and this is literally what they would give you, just some paper stapled together.
Classic.
The back 2 pages are the explosion.
Like everything that can make the car explode.
Everything that can make the car explode. Here is just some articles that I have printed out. Here's some, this is my fat cat.
Hello.
Excuse me, fatso. This is just some pages. This was the press release that they would use to advertise their car. So you can see it's like unconventional, unusual, unlikely, unpolluting, and then they talk about how aerodynamic it is. From here we just have a couple wire diagrams that go to the panel van. Just hand-drawn stuff.
Are these from one of the engineers?
Yes, these are from a guy named Samuel Jones, who was the previous owner of my car. He was also an ex-engineer.
That's awesome, and that's one of the benefits of, I guess, old cars is people are willing to, talk about their work. You have these diagrams. That's awesome. Yeah.
And then finally, this is kind of my Bible. This is the bill of materials, which lists every single part and part number that they used in the car.
Vital when you're restoring old cars.
Incredibly useful, and it has all these really nice hand-drawn diagrams, which are super cool. And yeah, it lists literally every single part of the car that you could ever need, down to the bolt. Next are some original sales brochures from Unique Mobility, both before and during the production of the Electrek. So the Alta was the design that was going to be used for the Electrek. This was the prototype. They called it the Alta.
Much more aggressive looking.
Yeah, much more sporty.
Almost has like Ford GT vibes.
It does. It kind of, you're right, it does look a lot like that. But yeah, so this was their original prototype for the Alta. This was their original lineup of vehicles with the dune buggies. They had the Bandits, which I believe is this one, the Alta there in the back, and then I'm blanking on what they called that one. An interesting fact about Unique Mobility actually is they had a pizza company as well. They called it Unique Pizza, and they used their dune buggies to deliver pizza. The Fargo, that's what the other one's called. So you got the Bandit, the Alta, and the Fargo.
Love it. All great Colorado spec cars, as you can see.
Oh, yeah.
Really illustrated here.
If you go to my YouTube channel, Electric Garage, they actually made a song about their dune buggies.
Oh my God.
It's called Dune Buggy.
Okay, we'll have to link that.
It's very catchy. This is just a picture of the Bandit. Very interesting floral print on the seats.
Yeah.
This is a full sales brochure. So you can see they have some of their pizza shops listed. Then they have some sales reports. This is from the founder, John Gould.
So do you have any idea why they had the pizza shop too? Is that just a passion thing?
I think it was just kind of a side project to make a little extra money.
And they could advertise delivering the pizzas and the...
In the dune buggies, yeah. So this was just like if you were an investor, this is what they would give you. So breaking down their sales, talking about their plans for the future. So this was a shareholder report. And now this was the predecessor to the Alta. This was their... You could see that the batteries were in the door stills. You can tell because the door stills are so thick. And like I said, all these pictures are available on the website as well.
I wonder what that would have done to weight distribution in the real world.
Yeah, it is interesting to think. But yeah, this is what the Electrek was supposed to look like.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just shift the angle here for the light. But wow, that would have been quite a design.
Quite a bit more stylish.
Yes. And it's aged nicely too.
Yeah.
Well, I guess a pop-up headlight somewhere in there. It looks like.
Fold back.
Oh.
So they would kind of like roll back into the chassis.
Super cool.
This is just another shareholders report. You can see that they were earning $39,000 in this year in '94. Yeah. Which is actually less than the previous year because the year before I think they made 50.
So a little bit of a death spiral that they were in.
Yeah, yeah. And this is so even though the first Electrek was made in 1979, but up to this point, the Electrek project was in effect from 1971.
Yeah, and aside from we mentioned the Carroll Shelby connection and stuff, were other like big American car or anyone were the other big manufacturers looking at what they were doing?
Ford was actually slightly interested. There was some talk back in the late 80s about Ford buying the design and producing it themselves, just because of how good the technology was. But never went anywhere.
Oh, well, and here they are now trying to catch up to Tesla.
Yeah, and when it gets really interesting is when we start getting into some of the diagrams for what they had planned. So here you can see that it's a front motor, rear wheel drive motor system with the batteries kept here in the back.
Oh.
This was a design for a rear motor. This was the Alta prototype with the battery stored in the door wells. And then we have the design that actually made it to market almost. Motors in the back, that didn't happen, but you have the batteries running down the center.
Right.
And then we can see some early designs for what later became the final design for the Electrek. So you can see they were experimenting with some circle headlights.
Wow, that is gorgeous. Sun Buggy Rentals.
Yep. You could rent a Unique Mobility Bandit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
fascinating. So even so they really were thinking of all different kinds of ways to package the batteries and the motors, and they weren't leaving anything off the table.
Nope, they considered a lot of stuff, and they brought in some pretty professional design people. The guy who designed the Electrek was actually a designer for Ford.
Okay, so people with experience in the car business, and it's amazing what they did. Let's just take one more look at it outside, but thank you so much, Declan, for showing me all this.
Of course.
Huge thanks to Declan for showing us his not only one, but two Electreks in the garage right now, as well as some other funky EVs. Comment if you want to check those out. We will link his YouTube channel too. This one is currently charging on 120 volt. And we actually had to just turn it off for the moment because it creates some interesting electromagnetic interference. it's not exactly shielded the way modern electronics are, is it? But what a cool little piece of history with this car. Super cool to drive it, take a look at it, and huge shout out to Declan, as well as the people from Electrek who have come forward from Unique Mobility and made all of this documentation, all of this archival work possible. We don't often get a chance to look at old electric vehicles, but I'm so glad we did today because this is living history and still running. And yeah, I mean, it looks, you can say whether or not you like its looks, but you can't deny that it is a significant car. So that's been Out of Spec Reviews. Thank you so much for watching.